Banff National Park is known for its beauty and wilderness, but it also holds stories of tragedy. In this video, we'll look at 5 of the worst deaths in the park's history. Real stories of people whose lives ended in some of the most tragic and unexpected ways. It was January 2nd, 2001, in Banff National Park, Alberta. Frances Frost, a 30-year-old artist and dancer, decided to go on a solo cross-country ski near Lake Minnewanka. She was recovering from a cold and eager to enjoy the outdoors again. The Cascade Fire Road was a trail she knew well, and she felt confident heading out alone. Frances grew up in Edmonton and had a passion for art and adventure. She danced with Ballet North and later worked as a dancer in residence at the Banff Centre. When not performing, she was a guide at Kananaskis Provincial Park, often spending her days in nature. That afternoon, Frances left Banff at noon, excited for her ski trip. Locals saw her on the trail, enjoying the winter day. However, hidden in the trees nearby was a cougar that had been acting unusually bold. Earlier that day, wildlife officials had received reports of a cougar attacking a dog near a home in Banff. Another sighting involved a woman and her dog being followed near Middle Springs. These incidents indicated the animal was searching for food and becoming less wary of humans. Frances had been skiing for about 90 minutes and was almost back to her car, just 300 meters away. The cougar had been following her silently, waiting for the right moment. As she passed by, it suddenly attacked. Frances fought back, but she was alone, and the cougar overpowered her. A group of skiers found the aftermath shortly after. The cougar had left the scene but soon returned to its prey. At that moment, Parks Canada wardens arrived and acted quickly to stop the animal. Officials later confirmed it was the same cougar involved in the earlier incidents. This attack was the first and remains the only fatal cougar attack in Alberta's history. That evening, Frances's parents, Laura and Ed Frost, received the devastating news. They had already seen a newspaper headline about a 30-year-old woman being attacked by a cougar in Banff and tried to contact Frances. Their worst fears were confirmed when a police officer arrived at their door. Laura later spoke about the shock of realizing her daughter was the victim. The loss was overwhelming, but Frances' parents did not place blame on the animal. They understood it was following its instincts, driven by hunger and survival. In the days after the tragedy, Laura, a scientist with connections to wildlife experts, sought to understand what might have caused the attack. Research revealed that the cougar may have been affected by several factors. That winter, a food shortage had pushed wildlife closer to human areas. Parks Canada had been relocating elk to manage their population, which may have disrupted the natural balance. Some experts also wondered if Frances' recent recovery from illness might have made her seem like an easier target, as predators in the wild can sometimes sense vulnerability. Even with these theories, the attack was highly unusual. Cougars typically avoid humans, and many questions remained unanswered. Why had this particular cougar followed Frances? Why had it been so aggressive? These questions left wildlife experts puzzled. Frances's family and friends mourned the loss of a vibrant, creative woman who embraced life with energy and passion. Despite their pain, her parents found solace in knowing she had been doing what she loved, enjoying nature. In her memory, they continued to ski the Cascade Fire Road each year, honoring the place she cherished. Over time, Banff has made efforts to manage wildlife interactions. Cougar sightings still occur, but officials continue to monitor and address risks near human areas. Frances's story serves as a reminder of how unpredictable nature can be. In January 2021, on the 20th anniversary of Frances's passing, Laura reflected on what might have been different if Frances hadn't been alone that day. These thoughts lingered, but there were no definitive answers. Today, Parks Canada remains focused on balancing wildlife and human activity in the park. Frances Frost's story is remembered not only for its tragedy, but also for her adventurous spirit and deep connection to the outdoors, a life lived with passion and creativity. It was July 21st, 2020, in Calgary, Canada. Vida Smith, a 69-year-old woman known for her skills as a blackjack card counter, met up with her longtime friend and business partner, Kevin Barton, also known as Chris Lee. They had worked together for years, traveling to casinos and making a living from their winnings. But over time, their relationship had become complicated. That day, Vida had arranged to sell Lee a passport she got from her ex-husband. He needed it to bypass casino bans placed on him. The deal was set at $10,000. Lee handed over the money, expecting the passport, but instead, Vida gave him a birth certificate. When she tried to leave with the cash, tensions escalated. Lee later testified that he grabbed Vida to stop her from leaving. During the struggle, he claimed she suddenly became unresponsive. In a panic, he checked for signs of life but found none. Instead of calling for help, he made a drastic choice. He placed her lifeless body in the back of his sport utility vehicle. What started as a business exchange took a tragic turn. In the days that followed, Lee tried to cover his tracks. He abandoned Vida's car at a local business and drove away in his vehicle. For several days, he kept her remains in his sport utility vehicle while trying to figure out his next move. At one point, he thought about escaping into the wilderness, but ultimately decided against it. He traveled to Edmonton before returning to Calgary. By July 22nd, Vida had been reported missing. When she didn't return home, concerns grew, and authorities launched an investigation. Soon, suspicion fell on Lee. Surveillance footage confirmed he was the last person to see her. After monitoring him for days, police arrested him. Inside his vehicle, they found Vida's purse, phone, and wallet. Alongside them were 5 loaded firearms, ammunition, and items suggesting he had tried to conceal what happened. Forensic evidence told a troubling story. Traces of Vida's blood were found in Lee's sport utility vehicle, and her deoxyribonucleic acid was discovered on a pair of handcuffs. Investigators determined that she had struggled inside the vehicle before losing consciousness. Despite Lee's claims that it was unintentional, the evidence suggested otherwise. Lee was charged and later admitted in court that he was responsible for Vida's death, though he insisted he never meant for it to happen. In 2023, he was convicted of manslaughter. However, one major question remained. Where was Vida's body? For nearly 3 years, Vida's family searched for answers. Eventually, Lee led authorities to a rest stop along the Trans-Canada Highway in Banff National Park, claiming that was where he had left her remains. However, due to harsh weather and rough terrain, the search was difficult. It wasn't until 2023 that authorities finally recovered Vida's remains at the rest stop, a place frequently visited by travelers and cyclists. For her family, it was a moment of both relief and heartbreak. Vida's daughter, Netta Power, expressed her pain in court, saying that Lee treated her mother as if she meant nothing. Her words reflected the deep loss they had endured. Vida and Lee had built a partnership in the gambling world, but as the years went on, trust eroded. Financial struggles, the pressures of the pandemic, and Lee's attempt to develop a cheating device for casinos only made things worse. What had once been a close friendship turned into a series of betrayals, ultimately ending in tragedy. For Vida's family, the path to justice was long and painful. Lee's efforts to mislead authorities and hide evidence only added to their suffering. While his conviction provided some closure, it couldn't undo the damage he had caused. During the trial, prosecutors presented key evidence that contradicted Lee's claims of an accident. His attempts to clean his car, dispose of crucial items, and avoid authorities showed that he was trying to escape responsibility. His history as a professional gambler and his repeated bans from casinos added more layers to the case. What happened to Vida Smith raises unsettling questions about trust, deception, and greed. If Lee had simply walked away that day, would things have ended differently? Was their partnership already beyond repair, or did that single moment seal Vida's fate? As Lee serves his sentence, Vida's family continues to grieve. The discovery of her remains brought long-awaited answers, but it didn't take away the pain of knowing that someone she once trusted had betrayed her in the worst way possible. It was January 10th, 2020, in Banff National Park. Dr. Laura Kosakowski, a 34-year-old family doctor from Canmore, set out on a backcountry skiing trip with her husband, Adam Campbell. and their friend, Kevin Hurtjas. Laura, known as Cuz by those close to her, was an experienced skier with avalanche training. The group had carefully planned this trip for months, trusting their skills despite the challenging conditions. Laura had completed over 80 backcountry trips in 3 years. Adam, a professional ski mountaineer, was familiar with extreme conditions, and Kevin was a certified mountain guide with extensive avalanche training. They were well prepared and aware of the risks. That morning, they headed toward the Hector South area along Highway 93 North, a spot that had become popular among skiers. Fresh snow had fallen the week before, and temperatures were around -15 degrees Celsius. Avalanche risks were moderate below the tree line but more hazardous at higher elevations. Despite this, they moved forward, equipped with avalanche beacons and emergency supplies. Their morning went as planned. They carefully assessed the snow conditions and made their way down the slopes. By mid-morning, they decided on one last run before finishing for the day. Adam and Kevin went ahead while Laura prepared for her descent. At 11:30 a.m., Laura skied down the 400-meter slope, moving smoothly through the fresh powder. Adam, wanting a better view, stepped onto a ridge. As he shifted slightly, the ground beneath him suddenly collapsed. In seconds, a massive slab of snow broke loose, rushing down the slope. Adam screamed to warn Laura about the avalanche. Laura, still skiing, had no time to react before the powerful wave of snow swept her away. Adam and Kevin immediately started searching, their eyes scanning the avalanche path. But the snow was too heavy, burying the slope in an instant. They activated their avalanche beacons and began searching for her signal. The terrain was steep, and the deep snow made progress slow and exhausting. After several tense minutes, they located Laura's beacon and started digging. The snow was packed densely, making each movement difficult. After 45 minutes, they reached Laura, buried under nearly 4 meters of snow, cold and unresponsive. Kevin attempted cardiopulmonary resuscitation, but she showed no signs of recovery. They wrapped her in extra clothing and a bivy bag, waiting for rescue. By 1:30 p.m., a Parks Canada helicopter arrived to airlift them out. Laura was rushed to Foothills Medical Center in Calgary, her body temperature dangerously low. Despite a faint heartbeat, she never regained consciousness and passed away the next day from internal injuries caused by the avalanche. Her loss devastated her family, friends, and the close-knit skiing community. Adam, heartbroken, described Laura as loving, passionate, and full of life. He shared how she had been his source of strength, teaching him the true meaning of joy and adventure. Laura's mother was on a flight home from Colombia when the news broke. Upon landing, Adam connected her to Laura for a final goodbye. Despite their experience, several factors contributed to the tragedy. Adam later reflected on underestimating the specific dangers of the slope, where fresh snow, wind, and terrain made the area more unstable than they had anticipated. Laura, known for her careful approach to safety, had not worn a helmet that day, something Adam deeply regretted. Though there was no way to know if it would have changed the outcome, he couldn't help but wonder if it might have made a difference. The mountains are unpredictable, no matter how skilled or prepared one may be. Adam's reflections emphasize the importance of constant vigilance, communication, and never underestimating the risks. Laura Kosakowski was a dedicated doctor, a loving wife, and an adventurer who embraced life with passion and resilience. She left behind a lasting impact on those who knew and loved her. But lingering questions remain. What if they had chosen a different route? What if the avalanche had been smaller or they had taken extra precautions? Could things have turned out differently if Laura had worn her helmet? These unanswered questions continue to weigh on those left behind, as they remember the woman who brought so much love and light into their lives. It was October 5th, 2022, in the Canadian Rockies. Daniel Heritage, a 28-year-old from Adelaide, Australia, was on the trip of a lifetime with his wife, Emma. The couple had spent months exploring Canada, hiking and climbing together. Both were experienced climbers, and for their final climb of the season, they chose Cascade Mountain's Mother's Day Buttress, a route they felt confident tackling. Daniel and Emma had been together since they were 18, sharing a deep love for adventure. As they made their way up the mountain, they talked and laughed, excited about the future. But as they climbed higher, the day took a tragic turn. Emma remembered the moment clearly. Daniel had just finished a difficult section on the 5th pitch, a steep corner crack. He exclaimed that it had been harder than he expected before he disappeared from view. She waited for his usual signal, the call of safe, but it never came. Minutes passed, then 10, then 15. A sinking feeling took over. Then suddenly the rope between them went slack. Emma's heart pounded as she called out, her voice filled with concern. No answer. Then she saw the rope tumbling down, and then Daniel. He was falling fast, hitting ledges on the way down. Emma could do nothing but watch in horror as he vanished over the cliff's edge. When he landed, Emma rushed to Daniel, but he was unresponsive. She called for help, holding him in her lap, whispering, hoping for a miracle. The only sounds were her breathing and the rope shifting. 90 minutes later, rescuers arrived and told her to leave first. Walking away from him on the mountain they had climbed together was the hardest thing she had ever done. Later, authorities reviewed what had happened. It appeared Daniel had not placed additional protection after the steep section, likely assuming the terrain had become easier. Emma didn't know exactly what caused his fall, maybe a loose rock, maybe a simple misstep. She would never know for sure. In the days after the accident, she had to recount the experience in detail for investigators. Reliving that moment was painful, but her statement was necessary to complete the reports. Then came another devastating challenge, bringing Daniel home. Their travel insurance didn't cover accidental loss of life, and Emma suddenly faced a massive financial burden. No funeral home would accept Daniel without a $12,000 deposit. Daniel's mother stepped in, paying the initial amount so arrangements could begin. But Emma still needed an additional $8,000 for the flight and $15,000 for funeral costs. Seeing her struggle, her twin sister Jessica started a fundraiser. In an overwhelming show of support, donations poured in, surpassing $42,000. Thanks to the generosity of friends, family, and even strangers, Emma was able to bring Daniel home. Still searching for closure, Emma returned to Cascade Mountain weeks later. She climbed to the exact spot where Daniel had fallen, expecting to be overcome with grief. Instead, she felt frustration. How could this have happened? They were skilled climbers on a familiar route. It didn't make sense, but she knew there were no answers. Despite the heartbreak, she chose to hold on to the beautiful years they had shared. Daniel wasn't just her husband. He was her best friend, her partner, her adventure buddy. The life they built together meant everything to her, and though his absence left a void, she knew she had to keep moving forward. Now, years later, Emma has found her way to live with the loss. She no longer dwells on the fall or its cause. Instead, she chooses to remember the love they shared and the incredible journey they had together. In a tribute to Daniel, she once wrote that he had been her best friend, the love of her life, and her adventure buddy. Their time together was cut short, but one thing will always remain: Daniel will forever be with her. It was April 18, 2024, in the remote wilderness of Banff National Park. Rob Copolillo, a seasoned mountain guide, was leading a backcountry skiing expedition in the Canadian Rockies. At 54, Rob had dedicated his life to the mountains, guiding, teaching, and inspiring others. He wasn't just known for his expertise, but also his humor, kindness, and passion for the outdoors. That day, Rob was leading a small group of skiers near Christian Peak, close to the Alberta-British Columbia border. The landscape was breathtaking yet unpredictable. Beneath the snow, hidden dangers lurked, including deep crevasses, cracks in the glacier that could open suddenly. Rob, always cautious, took every safety measure. He and his team carefully checked the terrain, ensuring a safe route forward. But despite his experience, nature proved unpredictable. Without warning, the ground beneath him collapsed. Rob fell into a deep crevasse, vanishing into the icy depths. His team acted immediately, trying to reach him while calling for help. The distress signal was relayed to Icefall Lodge, a remote outpost near the Lyle icefield. Within hours, Parks Canada dispatched a rescue team by helicopter, flying 3 specialists to the site. By the time they arrived, Rob's group had managed to pull him from the crevasse and were administering first aid. However, Rob was in critical condition. He had been trapped in freezing temperatures for nearly an hour, and his injuries were severe. The rescue team worked urgently to stabilize him before airlifting him to Lake Louise. From there, a shock trauma air rescue service, STARS Air Ambulance, transported him to Foothills Medical Center in Calgary, 2 hours away. Despite the efforts of medical professionals, Rob never regained consciousness. The harsh conditions and injuries had taken too great a toll. The news devastated the mountaineering community. Rob wasn't just a guide, he was a mentor and friend. His company, Veta Mountain Guides, was widely respected, and he had contributed immensely to the climbing and skiing world. He co-authored the Mountain Guide Manual and wrote extensively about outdoor safety, sharing his expertise with aspiring adventurers. Those who knew him described him as larger than life. Brian Lazar, a fellow guide and close friend, recalled that Rob wasn't just a mountain guy, and that it was just a small part of who he was. His infectious humor and vivid storytelling made him unforgettable, drawing people in and making the mountains feel less intimidating. Rob's greatest love, however, was his family. He was married to Rebecca Yarmouth, and together they had 2 sons, Dominic and Luca. Losing him was heartbreaking for them. He had always balanced his love for adventure with his role as a devoted husband and father. Following his passing, the mountaineering community rallied to support his family. A GoFundMe page was set up and quickly raised thousands of dollars. Messages of love and gratitude poured in from around the world, reflecting the deep impact Rob had on so many lives. Despite all precautions, the accident was unavoidable. Rob understood the unpredictability of the mountains, yet that never stopped him from exploring. He lived by a simple philosophy: embrace the adventure, push limits, and enjoy the journey. He encouraged others to do the same, reminding them that life is meant to be lived fully. His wife, Rebecca, had once questioned why he would go to a place where one could be there one moment and gone the next. For Rob, the answer was clear. The mountains weren't just about risk, they were where he felt most alive. People may wonder, what if he had been just a few steps away from that crevasse? What if help had arrived sooner? Those questions will always remain. But one thing is certain, Rob's legacy endures. The lessons he taught, the laughter he shared, and the lives he touched will continue to echo through the peaks he loved so much.